Welcome to Vlog Thursday number 438. There's a lot of things to talk about today. We got XCP-ng had some security updates, TrueNAS updates, pfSense 2.8 is here, and it works. I don't know, I loaded it. I didn't expect it not to work. I will do a video on it, but it's going to be a little shorter. I'll mention it today and answer any questions I can thus far. But one of the reasons it's going to be shorter, and this is something that people are just losing their minds in the comments about a bit too much, I think, is they keep asking me if I'm done with pfSense or is pfSense done? That is the other side of it too. But one thing I want to mention is if you look at the change log, it's a year and a half, I think, I don't know, a year in some amount of time since the previous update. And the change log is still short. So it's not going to be a real in-depth video. And that's been one of the reasons I haven't done as many pfSense videos is there's just not enough changes to talk about. So that's still going to be a theme here. It's a solid firewall. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are really happy about firewalls without massive changes, especially when I know I'm doing more videos about UniFi and their firewalls, but that's because they're catching up a pfSense. So when I talk about the traffic flow, someone says that's available in many other firewalls, such as pfSense. I'm like, you are correct. So it's news because it's added. If they don't add something new, it's not news. So that's kind of where I'm at with it, but it works. I tested pfSense 2.8, not that I expected it not to work, but for anyone just wondering, and I've seen people posting on Reddit and things like that. Now, my challenge, of course, I don't have CE in production. We have Plus in production. So we moved all of our systems over the years, all to pfSense Plus, all on Netgate hardware. Therefore, I don't really spend as much time testing the community edition. That is going to be something that's up to the community. So that's more of a thing. Nonetheless, all right. So I see people there, but let's talk about a couple things. And I want to cover I am going to launch. Some of you have commented, and I think this is great, that I do plan to put some focus into doing some news things. And I am not just trying to fill the air with more news. And I certainly don't, as many of you know, get overly excited about the latest releases from AMD or every time someone farts out a new AI BS machine. Those are not particularly interesting unless there's something more technical about that's interesting. So my news will be focused on that when I start covering more of it. I also like to cover things that are of interest to people, maybe around privacy and security. Those are two topics I talk about. So whether or not a event in the news or a series of events is impacting you is something I care about. Like, does this affect our industry in some ways? And I want to start with that, because one of the things I will bring up occasionally in the news, and this is just other things you may be interested in because I'm interested in them. And I think there's a cross of these things we are both interested in how policy affects the internet that we use and our privacy. And I bring that up because I'm a big fan of a lot of the things that Cory Doctorow writes, and therefore Who Broke the Internet, which was a 4-part series podcast, which is great. You can listen to it for free. There's a good write-up here, and I'll throw a link in it, but it's pretty simple to find. I've posted about it on my LinkedIn. That's where you can find a lot of stuff that I post, because I don't always know what other socials to use, but LinkedIn seems good enough for a lot of my business things. Who broke the internet? That's a story that starts all the way back in the 90s. And so this is a good read for anyone that's interested in how we got here and kind of the history of how things became as broken as they are. So that's something to consider if you're interested in how we got here. Now, something else before we get into the XCP-ng stuff I wanted to talk about. This was a fun read as well. I'll throw this out here in a link as well. We got here is the ground control to major trial. When a $130 million aerospace company chooses to endlessly abuse free trials instead of typing get poll, you start to question gravity or at least some common sense. I like that Oliver Lambert, the head of Vates, takes the time to write these things. This is just a little bit of insight, and there's others, in the open source community that maybe aren't as vocal about this, but sharing some insights as to how hard it is to manage an open source project. Because I hear people constantly just be like, oh man, let me be very angry about the fact that Vates just doesn't give me a completely, free version. I actually have to type git pull and run a build script to build the latest version of XO. That is terrible of them. They should provide me this. And Vates has been very clear. If we did, we would we wouldn't be able to build the way we build. We would not be able to forward the things we forward. Open source is not a business model. Open source is a development model. You have to figure out ways to put business around that. And Vates, I think, has navigated that well, and it's allowed them to grow. It's allowed them to keep developing. And if you're wondering what goes on behind the scenes, this is just really interesting. This is a company that went through and kept just setting up 30-day trials over and over again to avoid paying, but wanted to use the paid version. So they just kept running through email address, and they had at least 60 separate accounts tied to the organization to avoid paying. I mean, just, and this is the reality of it, is there's a lot of people. I've gotten into an argument with someone online maybe about a year ago. They were not happy with me because they were straight up, I'm just going to say it, they were bitching because Vates wanted money in order to build these integrations. This person was asked for it, but this person's argument was it shouldn't have to be money. It's just good for the community. And I should have these features on here. It was a weird integration a person wanted. I can't remember the name of the tool they were using. It was some older tooling that broke when a new version. I think it's when they went from version 7 to version 8 of XCP-ng, their tooling broke for how they do deployments. And they're like, well, I mean, I'd never heard of the tool before, but apparently I did some Googling and are people using it. But, this person who talked about having many, many servers at this large enterprise and said, I shouldn't have to pay for any licensing. Really? Okay. Wow. All right. So that's just, yeah, there's just too much of that going on out there where people kind of want to abuse the open source developers. If you follow the older episodes, there's a couple of them that talk about the pain of being an open source developer, such as the Open Source Security Podcast. It's on my list of podcasts that you'll find. There's just a lot of pain in there. And I think open source developers needing to let the community know why this is hard, because as much as we can complain about closed source crappy solutions, you watch the open source developers just get absolutely beat. It drives me a little bit crazy. I don't really have a solution or know what to do about it, but it's something to take into consideration when you think that, is there some work that goes into this? Yes, there is. All right. Greetings, bearded IT dad. I need to reach out to you. I think you wanted to do some, we will work together. Let's do some live streams and such and news things and all that fun stuff. All right. Make sure I caught up all the comments here. Moving on to things. What other stuff does Tom want to talk about? Let's just jump over to one more news story before I get into a couple of the updates. Because this one kind of dovetails in some ways to pfSense, but these are where those problems are on the internet. Good morning to the land down under. So Gray Noise discovers stealthy backdoor campaign affecting thousands of ASUS routers. Krebs on Security got hit with a giant DDoS. If you ever wonder where some of these DDoSs happen, I don't know it was specifically at all these particular, what I've seen estimates of around 9,000 of them with this problem. But yeah, these are a bunch of, usual consumer ASUS routers that are now turned into bots. Now, what makes this slightly interesting compared to, it's not news, so to speak, that there's some issues or some bots. It's much more that the NVRAM gets affected on this. And that means rebooting it. And currently I don't think there's a firmware update. So they'd have to write some type of firmware that would push this out and remove it from the system. That's a problem because you know what this is? CVE 2023-9870 run arbitrary commands for execution. That means these at least haven't been updated in 2 years. They probably aren't going to get updated this year either. So that's where a lot of these consumer ones sit. This is one of the reasons I was really happy to see Ubiquity do this. I know there's a lot of people who don't love it. And by the way, it's optional. You can turn it off. they turn updates on by default. And I praise any company that has updates on by default. People are like, but that could lead to breakage or that could cause a problem. Well, if you're technical enough to know that, hopefully you're technical enough to manage your own updates. If you are not technical enough to think about those things and you just plug things in, I think for those people, and well, at least there's 9,000 of them here available online that appear to have been breached. Yeah, then those people are not the people like us that are more technical, and therefore they should own devices that auto update because that's the only way this problem will get solved. If not, yeah, it's just more noise out there. So if you see the articles, I also try to filter through when I do the news. Like I see the articles, but it drives me bananas. I hate any news site that doesn't link to the source. I always want to know the source of the news or how this was discovered. And Gray Noise did the research on it. Therefore, I'm linking to Gray Noise. There's already a dozen articles by all the usual news companies who echo this problem right now. So yeah. I think it's far too many people put a consumer router into service and never update it. I wish it was only consumer routers that happened to, because every time we talk about Fortinet, which I like talking about Fortinet sometimes because of all the silly problems they have, that is a thing where it's a Fortinet and you're like, what do you mean the breach was the, 2022 CVE? It's 2025. And they're like, yeah, people buy it and don't update it. So it actually happens in the corporate world in very unfortunate amount of times as well, but definitely at a larger quantity in the consumer world. I can't say larger scale. And the reason I say that is because when you think about the ability for threat actors to do something, it's kind of easy to block out to say all these people on Comcast cable, consumer blocks of IP addresses, those can be filtered to an extent. But it's a lot harder when corporate companies, because one, there's higher value at stake here, often with enterprise companies. Second, they often have a lot of bandwidth and a lot of compute, so they have the ability to turn into bigger DDoS systems. It's kind of a mess. Fortinet wants to meet with you to discuss their products. Well, I wish you luck with that. They have a usable system. They just are in the news a lot for their system having a lot of flaws in it. That I think Fortinet, I don't know. I hear mixed on. I don't use them myself, but honestly, they have patches for a lot of these things. Second, one of the really dumb problems is the fact that people are constantly opening up to the internet, and that is what drives a pretty big part of the problems they have. They tell you not to do it if you're following any basic instructions. It says, please don't expose this management face to the internet. And then people expose the management face to the internet. There's so many things. Was it Juniper not that long ago? I can't remember if it was Juniper or Palo. There was a ton of their management interface exposed to the internet. It is also not ideal to expose it there, but you're like, why are people doing these dumb things? And I just don't have an answer for it. I think I probably have, maybe we'll cover it in a moment. Let's talk about some of the other things out there, like TrueNAS, because I see someone brought up a TrueNAS question. So we'll also bring up that you have to get your TrueNAS up to date. Recently started using TrueNAS, and I noticed at times it's hard to change file and dir permissions once they're added to the share. I don't find that to be true. So I think the real answer is people may have a harder time understanding how share permissions work. And that is probably a more likely scenario where there's a misunderstanding or expectation on how shares work. That's probably the easier or more common answer for that. Why do I have so many things going ding? Oh. 1 second. Someone tag me in something. Hold on here. All right. I've seen someone. Oh, I see. Right. Someone did it. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Here's the best part, and there's a reason I was reading that, and pause. And I didn't mean to distract from all of you here. Literally, consulting project from a company with a TrueNAS problem, and the problem was permissions, because this is a very large, this company has about 6 petabytes of storage in TrueNAS. So we're talking about a larger company. For those of you who don't know, it's used in large companies, but even this large company had some problems. And one of our techs had completely fixed this problem for them. And they were having, it was all surrounding permissions. It is probably, and it's not that people say, well, can't they just make it easy? I'm like, the problem is there's a lot that goes into permissions. This, is an Active Directory tied to a TrueNAS. They also have an external synchronization system for the permissions. So I will do a debrief with the tech to find out some of the details. But trust me, permissions, even with large enterprise companies that do have internal IT, can be confusing unless you do them a lot. That's where that comes in. That's why actually, I once I seen what the name was with the company they're working with, I'm like, yes, that is another company dealing with permissions problems. So we solve them for people all the time. And actually, I think it's kind of funny because never underestimate the power of stripping the permissions. I say that in my videos. I show that in my permissions videos. The number of times that people have watched my video on it, pay for consulting, and we do the same thing I do in the video, and they go, I was afraid to do that. Pretty common. So just throwing it out there. I don't think there's a problem with the permissions. I think there's a lot of problems with people. I mean, to go on a total rant on it. It's just a matter of getting all the details right with the permissions. Opening management interfaces on the internet is always it's always a great idea. Make for a really fast, reliable system. Yes. Yeah. So permissions are just everyone's. I say do more videos on permissions. Speaking of TrueNAS, though, not related to permissions, this is what everyone wants to know. On June 1st of 2025, TrueNAS apps catalog will enable per app IP addressing. But IP addressing, got to get my words right. This update will also break the ability to automatically migrate apps. So, by the way, if you like your apps and you would like to not have to redeploy them manually, please update to the latest TrueNAS 25. If not, you can read this notice that's been given on May 28th, just yesterday. This is something that you are on a deadline to do, or you're going to lose and break apps. Simple as that. Because it's just one of those things. It's a breaking change for the better. I know people are going to be upset because people like to stay in old versions, which I don't understand. I definitely know lots of technical people that just lag behind versus I'm like, YOLO, time to update. I've got to update all my systems because there's a new version out and I want to play with it. I don't know. That's me. Maybe it's not you. I'm well versed in rolling things back if things go awry, including in TrueNAS or firewalls. So this is another one of those things. I know everyone wants the per app IP addresses. I know I do, because that would be a great feature. I just been telling people in the past, if you want that, you got to wait till the future, because it's not an available feature of TrueNAS. People are like, well, I'm going to go with Docker by itself and its own VM. And I'm like, that's a great solution. They're like, but I want TrueNAS to do it. I'm like, I cannot do anything more than offer words of encouragement for the developers at TrueNAS. Like, go team, go. I can't control it. They know everybody wants it. They have been working on it. It is finally coming. So I'm excited about that. That's actually some good news. Well, this is, like I said, having a plan how to roll back. That is, it's something you should have anyways, because sometimes things break when you don't do anything. Therefore, having a plan, it's kind of the plan for the same thing. If it breaks, that happens, and we have a plan to roll back. If it goes well, awesome. But you also have to have a plan because, I don't know, I woke up one day and it didn't work. And that is an unfortunate thing. It's just how things go. Back over to this this is a couple things. This is important because I want to show what happens when you don't update things, or not don't update things. When you have a security problem, we'll start with my security problem. And mine's on purpose. I did this for demonstration purposes. Please don't make an insecure system unless you're doing it for demonstration purposes. There's some updates in the Zen Orchestra that will check to make sure the drivers are up to date, because I will link this. If you didn't know, there's an update in the PV drivers. So the drivers that are for Windows. So multiple Windows PV driver vulnerabilities update now. I didn't even look at the CVE score. Let's kind of look real quick here. It's assigned an ID, but it does not appear to have a score assigned to it yet. So anyways, there's CVEs. Windows guests are running vulnerable version of a Zen PV drivers are affected. Other guest OSs are not. So you need to update them. Now, this is what's kind of cool. Important. See at the top here. Some of your VMs are vulnerable. Please check them immediately. Sorry, too many words today. I'm second live stream in, so I'm stuttering just a little bit. Windows Server Lab 25 here. Click for information. It lets me know that this is affected. This VM is running the PV version that is vulnerable. I actually really like that they added this, because now you can easily find which servers have or have not been updated. By the way, this particular server is just pulling from the Windows updates, this right here, and they are not pushed if you're using this method. So you have to do the download method. By the way, make sure you are careful. You can't just flip-flop between them. I've got a video on this, but there's also write-ups in the XCP-ng. You can't just flip-flop because you'll break things. But this one right here, I am not pushing via Windows Update. I actually loaded them via the download, and I'm on the latest version, so it does not show this one as vulnerable. I just really like that they added that as a notice in there. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, snapshots are definitely your friend for being able to just quickly roll back to things. Just roll it back to where it needs to be. Do a snapshot. But the updates to XCP-ng is actually unrelated to the security update. I just wanted to cover that one first. There's a lot of other good updates in here. They have been refactoring all the code. And so you get through the patches. Oh, there's a bunch of minor patches for the OS as well. Go ahead and just do those. So I updated all the systems, no problems. Let's see, scroll down. Updates to the X06. This has been a slow ride getting to version X06, but they're getting there. I'm hoping to see it later this year. There's a way you can preview it now, but the preview is kind of sad. It's just not great. It looks good. You can see where they're going with it. It's just they're very unfinished right now. Same with the XO Lite. They're still coming along on that, but they're doing it in a very structured, composed way. And because this is virtualization infrastructure, I prefer it to be very stable. I want to see a good, solid release. So I will suffer through. I mean, we all want the newest and latest shiny thing now. I'd really like to see dark mode immediately, but I will also, cheer on the developers because that's all I can really do. I don't write the code. Did you see today about the Arc GPU Intel getting VFIO in Q4 this year? I don't keep up with a lot of GPU news, but that sounds cool. TrueNAS definitely has a learning curve. Today, I was trying to create a VM and failed miserably, so I created a ZVal and encrypted data set, which failed unless I set encryption to inherited, but creating a VM and setting the storage to import ZVal resulted in a failure in a VM to rename the data set. Interesting. I don't like, and they just switched it all. So even I don't know, should I take down my old videos on TrueNAS virtualization because it's been changed? I don't like TrueNAS for virtualization. I think maybe with what they're doing, it'll get better. But right now, it's ugly. And I don't know. I just don't use any of their VM stuff, so I can't really answer many questions about it. I barely used it before. They nuked it and put a new system in. That's still KVM based, but it's got some other features. But back to, I don't really use it. Hence why I'm talking about XCP-ng. I just don't look at TrueNAS because even with its current iteration, with what they put in, it doesn't have a tenth of the features that you can get with other hypervisors, either Proxmox or XCP-ng, because it doesn't have the ability to just move live VMs or anything like that. It's just kind of convenient to run a VM, I guess, but it's not like there's no good easy way to say like export backup or move this to another TrueNAS. That's all very manual inside of TrueNAS. That's why I don't like it for virtualization. It's one of the reasons I like running, XCP-ng and Zen Orchestra. But there is a few things in here. As I mentioned, the full mirroring backups over 50 gig from S3 encrypted remotes. I guess there was a bug with that. I haven't played with that particular feature, but that's neat that they can do that now, because it was only when you're doing encrypted S3 remotes. And they offer, by the way, full encryption. Before they didn't, now they do, because there's a question someone had asked a few times about how should I handle encryption. I prefer to encrypt the VM, but if you want to encrypt the backups because you don't have VMs that are encrypted, there's a way to do this currently in there. And it's not just for S3, it's for any of the backup targets. But they've been doing a lot of refactoring the backup because they want to fix a lot of the code. It's also because they're updating the SNM API that's being rewritten as well. So they're going from the V1 they're at now to, or V1 point something, and going over to a V3, which is going to offer greater than 2 terabyte limits for drives, and therefore be a lot better and more performant. So there's a lot of rewriting, but that also means the backup system, which is got some of the same limitations, is being rewritten at the same time to get rid of those limitations as well. So there's not a lot that changed in this latest update, but it's some good stuff in there. Lots of graphical improvements. I like that they let us know about that. Like, that's how I think it's kind of cool, is they take the time to, even though it might be tedious, have really good graphics and really good icons, because they've, everyone kind of complains about the interface for the older version here, but the new version is supposed to look just a whole lot better and a whole lot cleaner. I mean, they got some previews of it here, which I think is great. What else do we have here? Some CLI updates. If you didn't know, they have a full REST API. There's a lot going on with that for people who want to build out types of integrations. They are constantly updating features to that. Same thing when people want to integrate some of the DevOps tools. They have that, some new hub templates. Zen Orchestra PowerShell mode, if you want to play with PowerShell with it. Support for Netbox. Netbox is on my to-do list, hopefully soon, to get set up. I think Netbox is a great, cool open source platform. I just haven't taken the time to build and integrate it yet. What's this here? Oh, they fixed an issue with apparently a Safari login. All right. That's all I got for the change updates on there. Mostly the security ones are the ones that are real important, but while I was here, I figured I'd mention the other ones here. All right. What other questions can I answer here? Yeah, looking forward to seeing the 2 TB limit removed. I am, because I'm sick of hearing people complain about it. It won't change the fact that I'll keep telling people not to keep stuffing that much data in one drive. I'll still do that all day. There's better ways to handle storage and inside your VM. That is not the ideal way to handle storage. I've got a whole video on storage design. I made that video to try to convince people that they should have better storage design. Yeah, there is ways you can set things to dark mode. Occasionally it breaks things, though. It's a bolted on solution, not the right solution. Having native dark mode is the right solution. But yes, I know there's ways you can change things. Decided to build a new community and start self-hosting it yourself. Awesome. I use a Windows VM on TrueNAS, but Incus is complicated for Windows VMs right now. Ended up going back to electric eel. Interesting. Yeah. No easy answers. I don't know. It's just not made for virtual machines. That's all I can really say. I've seen some people, where did it go? Sometimes I hate Google for just being hard to find. Why are things hard to find? Let's see here. You would think if you have is there any customer names in here? Maybe, yeah. There's a couple. Anyways, so I can't show this, but I'm looking at it. You would think if I'm looking at my recently updated documents, the recently done presentation would be in that list, but Google decided to omit that from the list because it's stupid. But that's life. Let's keep answering questions for people. You got bit by the self-hosting bug. You use TrueNAS for the NAS part. Yeah. Storage design implies that you think about things before they get pushed to production. Yeah, isn't that an interesting concept? Ever heard of Garage for distributed storage? I have not. It's better for Zen to check Windows Update and the VM settings to enable auto update in the Zen tool installer. I don't know. Whichever way works for you. I usually load it with the tooling, but that's me. It means there's not many updates that come to the PV drivers. They're not updated frequently. I like Windows Update because it'll just update things with you as you go without having to go, hey, look, another thing I got to load an update for. But loading it, downloading it, I think the last update was like 6 months before, maybe a year. I don't know. It was a while. So there's not one of those things that nags you that there's a constant, oh man, I got to update this. So I don't know. It's probably not a bad idea to load it. I'm a newbie who would like to try some apps in TrueNAS, but I don't want to open up my system to hacking. I have a pretty good firewall from my Frontier provider, but do I need more? I don't think it's a good idea to open up the apps to the internet. Use a VPN. That's generally what I would recommend. Don't just pop it open to the global public world. Load those apps locally, learn about how VPNs work, or even if you don't want to run a VPN on the firewall, one of the apps you can load is Tailscale. And Tailscale has a pretty good free version for home users that would like to use it. That's another way. If the goal is to access those apps remotely, that's one of the ways you can do it. You host XO on TrueNAS, so it's hard to get it back and up and running after 2504, but I figured it out. Oh, that's cool. See, storage device, it's not Nutanix. I think many vendors try to do everything, end up doing nothing good at all. Any good conferences coming up? I forgot to mention that. IT Nation Secure. I'll be at that event next week. But I'll let you know. I got to think about what other events I'm going to. View sessions. Am I name on any of these yet? I registered I'm speaking at some of this. I don't know where I land though. I'm on day Tuesday. Actually, if we search for nope, I'm not on the list. I am speaking. I just don't know where. Somewhere. I gotta look up my schedule. Is there a Tom in here somewhere? I don't know. I'll be at the event and I'll be on some panels. And I think because I'm on panels and not the primary speaker for these. So nonetheless, that's where I'll be. Message me. We'll talk about some other ones. I'm late. I'm still in TrueNAS 2410. Is it safe to move to 25 yet? It's actually, if you don't want your applications to break, you have to move to 25. Tailscale for VPN stuff. Yep. I don't know that Tailscale then graduate to Cloudflare Tunnel. I mean, you're just changing out which proprietary app you're using. I'm a big open source advocate, but I mean, Cloudflare tunnels are fine. I just dislike that they're dependent on Cloudflare, and this is what people like will lose their mind about and call it a rug pull. And then I guess in some ways it is. Like Untangle was a really popular firewall. Rip. Now it's not, because the company changed their mind, and you free users are freeloaders. And even though we did it for years, we decided Untangle firewall shouldn't be free anymore. And that's the problem. When anyone suggests a proprietary closed source company has a free version, I'm always skeptical, because I've worked in tech a long time, and these companies offer things for free to gain business. And sometimes it works out really well for them. Other times it becomes a problem for them, because they end up with more free than they can support, or too much noise comes in from the free, and they become an established player. And they just say, well, if you're not going to pay us money, we're just going to tell you to go away. So Cloudflare Tunnels, cool service, until they decide it's $50 a month or whatever they decide. They get rid of the free tier, and you have to decide if it's worth it to pay for. Any word from the folks at XCP-ng about 9? Well, I don't know when 9's coming out. 8.3 is supported for a long time, so I'm not sure why you're looking for version 9. I mean, at some point, I would expect a version 9. I just don't have any idea when. How many snapshots should I typically have? I have over 2,000 at this point. Maybe I need to tweak one of them. I would not want to have that many. Someone had some interesting problems. It started out, and these are how these consulting jobs go. I would like assistance with why my snapshots are working, but my ZFS replication is taking way longer than it should. Well, it turns out once someone had several thousand snapshots, I forget, it was like 20 or 30,000. It was a pretty big number. I didn't see right away just how many they had, but it turned out that was the problem. They had so many snapshots that the processing of all the snapshots was taking longer than what it was taking to get your ZFS replication done, because it was the process, I guess, just doesn't handle well when there's too many of them. So I don't have that many myself. I have maybe 100 snapshots, but I mean, I don't know your scenario or use case. There is a point where you create kind of a problem depending on how fast your machine is. So if you have a slower machine and it has to process that and it puts them in a queue, even the rendering that you'll do in the web page may have problems with it. So I don't know if that's too many. It depends on your system, but it seems like a lot more than I have. If you're not paying for the service, you're very likely the service. This is often true. I get that completely about Cloudflare, but when I get to the point, you'll likely have enough understanding to make that determination. Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm not telling people not to use it. I just want that in the back of people's minds. You love the session Matt did with getting started with Penguin. Have you played with this? I have not done it much. Matt's used it a lot over the last while. I've not used it much. I'll play with it eventually. I know enough about it, like how it works. I just haven't really sat down and deployed it. Yeah, well, time-based retention is what this person was doing. They just wanted to keep everything for a year, and they kept a snapshot they were really granular. They were doing like hourly snapshots of tons of data sets. And I was like, this is excessive. This was a home user, by the way. They had a lot of data, but boy, did they had a lot of snapshots. I was worried when someone back in 2018 had over 60K snapshots. They didn't understand why everything was slow. They were running out of space. Yeah. And that's the whole problem. I guess people just kind of really get wrapped up into it. And I think that's the solution, just doing a million snapshots. And I'm like, that's not ideal. So yeah. Am I done with Synology? Yeah, I don't know. I still have a few Synologies. I'm not going to get rid of the ones I have, but obviously it's one of those things of you're going to think about the future. So I have these three right here. Although I don't know what to do with this one. because the DVA one is running the Synology surveillance station, and I'm probably going to move all my cameras over to UniFi just because surveillance station has been ultra reliable. And that's where the story ends. It's reliable. It works. It's not coming out with a lot of new features versus UniFi. They've been really on it with good cameras, features, et cetera, et cetera. And I think I want to probably switch my camera system over. I don't have anything wrong just comparing features though. And I don't want to abandon this, but I don't know. I kind of want to play with the UniFi one more because I like new shiny things, and these cameras are good. These are some Amcrest cameras, and the resolution's not bad on them or anything. But yeah, I don't know. They've been up for years, and they're just kind of they work. I want some of the new, better facial recognition and some of the new features that UniFi has that I'm a little bit more excited about. But from a reliability standpoint, I've been using this for like 4 years now, and at home, we've been using these for other clients for a long time, but it works. It's been absolutely rock solid reliable, but it's also hasn't changed much at all in 4 years. That's kind of why I haven't done a new video on it. Homepage is your dashboard, but Homer is good as well. I like Homer. Yeah, I see other people like it too. I just keep thinking of Homer Simpson because I'm saying it the same way. You have authentic set up with SSO with Homer so everyone can see only their role. Yeah. Talking about Synology, have you tried UR backup recently in terms of image backup? It works almost perfectly with Windows machines, but Linux does not. Having a backup is a good thing anyways. I don't worry about backing up to Linux systems. Windows is what I usually need an image for. So if I tested UR backup, it would probably be with a Windows system. Oh, what models am I running on this? Let's look. Oh, that's right. I'm looking in the wrong place. I have the Rogue Creative Uncensored, Dolphin Mistral, Llama 3B, DeepSeek, Granite Code, and that's all I've got on here. Not much. Not a ton of interesting things in here. I don't use it all that much. I don't find that the AI stuff, it just depends what I'm doing. I use OpenAI still because it has a few tricks up its sleeve that can be pretty good about writing some YouTube titles and reading transcripts. It seems to do that better than I'm getting with OpenAI, but I think I got to move to Ollama being hosted elsewhere. So I think that's probably where my problem is Ollama is not running on a fast enough card. I have another, I don't know. I'll figure that out later of if I want to put it on a faster card so it works better. It's honestly slower than ChatGPT, so I keep using ChatGPT. But every now and then, it depends on what I'm asking, of course, because as we learned recently, I've seen this in the news. I didn't dive into the article because I don't trust these companies anyways. But apparently, there is a really big problem with the way these companies, these chat companies, are handling privacy and turning people over to the police for something they think they searched. I seen the news articles on it. I don't know and didn't feel like sorting out the news article, but I've never respected, I don't care what these companies tell me. I have zero faith in Google Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, I don't care which one, that they will maintain any level of privacy. By the way, if you were to somehow get into my chat history of the OpenAI system that I use the most, you would find a lot of, hey, make me a YouTube title based on this transcript. Like anything I have in there is not private information, really. It's sometimes it's me asking dumb questions. There may be a level of embarrassment of, why is Tom asking? Did he just not know how that worked? Probably. That'd be my worst suffering. Would be like, yeah, I couldn't remember what those letters meant. So I decided to look them up and have a discussion about it. But for the most part, yeah, it's not I'm not worried about privacy. I do if I have something more private to discuss, if you will. If you want to ask things, that's where the private ones come in, and I'm fine to ask it questions like that or upload data to it. Was that camper in your backyard, or was just crawling under one trying to hotwire the motor? Oh, yeah. Where'd it go? Yes, that is my camper. Is there another view of it? No, you can see part of it here. There's a squirrel. But yep, that is my camper. Tom, thanks for the tip on 2600. Got my first copy this week. Awesome. Hey, that's good to hear. I've not kept up with some of the recent ones. I can't remember what card I have right now. It's an older one. There's probably a way to figure this out. If we go over here and we go to the Zen Orchestra, and we pull up my Olama, and we see what card have we passed through on this. Is a GeForce 1070 GTX. So this is why it's not fast. Self-serve only when it comes to LLMs. It really depends what I'm asking. If I'm asking a bunch of silly, dumb things, I don't care. So far, the squirrels have not tried to make a loan on it or make a home in my home on wheels. Any opinion on Signal app using DRM for fighting recall, making app locally installed on Windows? What do you mean using DRM? I don't. Using are they loading something proprietary to get it to stop doing that? If they're running on a proprietary operating system, there's probably more proprietary components. So Signal is an open source company. All the protocols open source. How they do things is open source. So I don't have any specific. I've not dug into the exact mechanism, but if they are fighting Windows and probably had to use a Windows utility, I wouldn't really have an opinion on it because you're running it on Windows. And to think Microsoft has any at all concern for your privacy, the fact that they've released Copilot in the most terrible fashion, only until be shamed by security researchers to hold off a little while before they re-released it. Microsoft doesn't care about your privacy at all. I wouldn't even want to run Signal on a Windows computer, let alone one with Copilot on it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what mechanism they use to stop Copilot from sucking data out of Signal, but at least they're putting some effort towards it. Of course, that sometimes if you're building on a proprietary operating system with a proprietary garbage tool like Copilot that's just trying to suck all the data up and make it easily accessible for anyone. And I say garbage because I don't think there's anything great that it does right now, other than seems to be able to recall all of your data that you put in the computer. So I don't know. I've not dug much into Copilot. I also haven't run Windows in a long time. So if Windows has gotten better, someone let me know, because based on my brief interaction Windows or the fact that I play games sometimes, I don't think Windows is better. So Total Recall. Yeah. I finally got my ASN V4 Space Leased finally going live soon from my house straight to London IX. Awesome. Good to hear. The last thing I'll cover here, I did have one more thing I wanted to talk about. Oh, look, there's more notices on Reddit. Oh, good. I like when people say hi. This is good discussion. We don't have a lot of data on this. And this is also not good. So in CRN news, I'll throw a link to this. I'll throw a link to the Reddit post instead. So this is the Reddit post, which any of you follow me, I post on Reddit as well. Here's a whole article, which is about Screen Connect having an incident. Now, they believe this incident, and Mandiant's involved, so they called in, the big respected company here, which they should. To do this investigation. Now, if you don't know what Screen Connect is, it's a tool from ConnectWise that we as a IT services company, MSP, use for remote access. It's an extremely popular tool. They had a security incident around February of last year called Slash and Grab, where they found a flaw in the product, and that was very bad. This is a different type of flaw, and there's just not a ton of details because we just don't know. Now, the good news is they contacted the few people that were directly impacted by this. That's the good news. The bad news is there's not a lot of other details until Mandiant finishes the investigation. There appears to be a security update, a patch for those of you that are self-hosting it. But one of the things that someone pointed out here is this happened and was identified in their cloud version, their hosted version. So people are then saying, well, is there a problem if I self-hosted it? And some people were celebrating that they self-hosted it. And somewhere I replied to someone's comment here. Where did it go? They deleted it. Right here. They said cloud host would be better, and I chuckle with my self-hosted version unaffected. The problem is the flaw exists in the self-hosted version. Yes, there's an update, but how do you know no one has access to your self-hosted instance? What type of logging are you using to validate that? That is the problem here. And if you don't know if someone accessed it, you really can't say they didn't. Just because you don't have logs of it happening, that was among the things they appeared, they get in and it's very suspicious. Let me read here if they have any details. There's just not a lot of insight until hopefully Mandiant publishes a lot of this. And it'll be at ConnectWise's discretion, but it's just really interesting that we're seeing, well, not too interesting. It's scary that we're getting these level of attacks on MSP tools. This is something we're seeing more and more of, where the tooling that we use to manage clients is what the threat actors are going after, because it allows them to get lots of privileged access and bypass all those pesky multi-factor things. And this was exploited based on a flaw. But I just don't like when someone's premise is, well, I self-host, so I shouldn't be affected. How do you know unless you have a really good external logging system? I used to send all my Screen Connect logs when I was hosting Screen Connect over to Graylog and dump everything in there. I knew every action. Matter of fact, I learned some really interesting things by doing this. Was when you would copy things in the clipboard, it would dump the clipboard data over to the logging server. So I would have I had first seen it and I'm like, what is all this in the logs? And realized, oh, this is clipboard data. And it would grab it all. But that's great. Having some type of third-party logging server that allows you to sift through the data later is really important. Second, in really dumb hot takes someone had, and I replied to non-upvoted person here. They were down. I downvoted them at first, but then I just fixed it. Anyways, they were just like, well, everyone throws around nation state and it doesn't have any meaning. No, the nation state has quite a different meaning than normal threat actor. It's not some generic term, because nation states have a different angle. And I posted this as a reply. I want to be able to be very clear on this when it comes to security, that when someone says nation state, so when you're talking about a normal criminal hit and run, they're here to make some money. They're looking for the easiest way to make that money. They're like anyone else. What's the easiest way I can make money? How much effort do I put? Is a big enough company for me to put some time into, or is there another company I can just move on to and make some money on, gain access to, etc. Nation states have a very different goal because you don't know always what their goal is, but they have a lot of resources. They have a lot of political motives that drive them. Sometimes there are also military motives. They're not necessarily just trying to make a quick buck. It is worth them to spend a ton of time on something to achieve their goal because they have a massive budget frequently to push them forward with what they want to do. It makes them a very interesting adversary. They also are often never trying to contact and let anyone know they were there. They're trying to remain silent. Therefore, if they get into a system, they may delete some logs or just be very judicious and delete their log entries. That's why you need a third-party logging server so you have a way to comparison, because just the differential of I have logs here but they are missing now, and I have logs here that aren't missing, that at least will give you those indicators. That's why it makes it really hard to figure some of these things out, but it's just stuff I wanted to think about. This is also some of the topics I'll be covering in the news, is the details of how an attack happens. I really like getting into the impacts of it and how that works. That's what's interesting to me, at least. You can use Security Onion for loggings. Absolutely. What do you think of using Jet KVM? Seems dangerous. Any KVM is dangerous, especially if you expose it to the internet. Oh, yes, Stuxnet. That's for sure. Nation states are also not really motivated by money until oh boy, this is where it gets fun. Until you talk about North Korea. North Korea is pretty much motivated completely by money. So hold on. Let's find this latest episode, but I'll drop this for you folks because this is great. This was a good good one. Where is the link to it? Man, it's always, I hate when podcasts don't have good landing pages. Like, but I'll throw this one here. Here's at least one of the, I don't know why Googling it doesn't land on their page. Either way, here's the episode title, because I don't know what you're using for podcasting, but 227 reasons to worry about North Korea. Can I just, does they have a landing page somewhere? They have a YouTube. I can land it on their YouTube. That's probably even more helpful. So here's their YouTube. It's anyways, short podcast, relatively speaking. They talk about the problem with North Korea. North Korea pretty much gets their income, because they're sanctioned, all from stealing crypto money. So they have a lot of other motivations, but they're definitely highly motivated to get around sanctions by acquiring crypto. And it's really interesting. If the tax stops a service and it costs that business, state, country. Russian, China state hackers also like money if they can get away with it. Russia's an interesting one because there's a mix of people who are officially, and I don't know that this is clear. I listen to a lot of these podcasts, and this is why attribution is hard. It seems like there's a mix where some of the people do work directly for Russia, some do not. And so some are in it for the money, but then occasionally when the money people find something or stumble across access to something, I think they hand it to, if I understand this correctly, the people. So like the people that actually do work for the government. I'm not 100% clear on where those lines are in Russia, if there's lines at all. You got a GLI KVM connect to a suspect. If I connected to a suspected malware computer and done fixing, it's safe to connect to another machine that is known clean. I don't see why connecting to GLI KVM, like it's a KVM, it's keyboard, video, mouse, and I'm not aware of any ways malware can migrate through a screen in a USB emulated device. So I don't think that's an issue. The monitor needs love too. Please talk to the camera, not to the monitor. I know I try to look up, I need to get one of those screens that you can see through. You can do that. I have a teleprompter and I can do it with that. So I can read and do that. But yes, there's a lot of documentaries on it. It's a lot of interesting. I probably listen to more podcasts on it. There's no easy answer for it. That's the easiest way I can say that. I do try to talk to the camera when I'm recording it, but recording's different than me reading things on the screen. I haven't looked at Greenbone in a while for CVEs. I played with it years ago. Is it still kept up to date? Do they still have a free version? I don't know the answers to these things. Let's look. Open VAST report. Get free consultation. Is there a download? Or is it called Greenbone Basic? Buy here. So they have a I don't see I remember they used to have a community edition, but I don't see it now. Maybe it's just buried somewhere, but it isn't obvious. How's that? Yeah, there's a fork. I don't know. I haven't tested the fork. So I have acquired an old APK and I've tested that and it works, but I don't know. Maybe at some point I'll test the fork. You need to set the camera and your monitor to the same level so you don't have to look down. They are at the same level. So that's my fingers are on the edge of the monitor. So if I move the monitor at all up, you'll see the bottom of the monitor. So the camera sits right on the lowest part of the monitor. The problem is that's still, the monitor's here and camera's here. Monitor here, camera there. So I can't fix that. Nothing I can do about it. Such is life. There we go. Just, you know what? We need a notch. Isn't that how Apple solves it? Doesn't Apple have the notch in things? We'll just use the Apple idea. Drilling. I kind of like the idea of drilling holes in monitors just because it sounds fun. Oh yeah, the AI magic. Sorry, I was busy deleting snapshots. Yes. Yeah, they have that really cool demo I seen where it takes your eyes and remaps them. So even if your eyes look somewhere else, it remaps your eyes to always be on the camera. So if you keep your face forward and it'll just remap it so it always looks like you're looking that way. Or do I just put an AI version of talking head that always looks at the camera no matter where my head is actually at? I mean, why not? Just get a bigger teleprompter. I have a teleprompter. You've been to my studio. You know which camera I'm using, and I should eventually set up this as a teleprompter where I have a screen on it, or I'm eventually going to move my live streams over to the other camera that already has a screen on a teleprompter. Greenbone packages on Kelly. So they probably have the open version. It's not a lot of companies have done this. There's one of the companies, they were bugging me to do a review a couple of years ago, but I really didn't like the way they handle things. Like their community edition, absolutely no links on their website to it. And I called them out on that. They're like, oh, we have a community edition we'd like you to review. One, their community edition was like 2 years out of date. Second, the only way to get to their community edition, I can't remember the name of the software, it was some type of firewall security stuff. You had to go /community at the top. You could not find a link to that they obscured all of that, but they tried to claim to be an open source company. No, they were a company that 2 years ago acquired an open source company and quit updating the open source version. And basically like, hey, we still have an open source version that we don't update. And it's really hard to find. By the way, contact sales for details to actually get a version that has anything recent in it. Yeah. My studio is at home. Yeah, too many cameras, first world problems. Yes. Just get a 360 camera. Yeah, it's NVIDIA Studio. I don't know if it works, but I think that was the name of the software. I don't know if it ever reached a production or more than just a demo. Maybe it is, and I'm just not keeping up with the times, which completely could be true. I don't keep up with all the media stuff. Nonetheless, I'm going to leave this here. We've gone an hour. I'm running low on water, and I've got a few things to do today, and I'm going to wander out of here. So thanks for watching. I think this was always fun interacting with all of you. I will try to do this on Saturday as well before I go to IT Nation, because it seems like a fun thing to do is have a few more live streams and all that fun stuff. But no, this is great. I will be available limited. Next week's I'll be at the IT Nation talking, but I'll also do at least a short vlog Thursday. I'm trying to think of that as well. I'll try to make sure I get one done either on Saturday or Sunday as well. But I'm not a hard person to find. homelab@lawrencesystems.com. Hit up the forums.lawrencesystems.com, or just lawrencesystems.com. You can hang out with me on the socials and wherever you'll find me. All right. Thanks.